Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 23rd lesson. And we're going to talk today about some concepts that might be a little bit difficult. So I'm going to go through them very slowly and carefully. The one thing we're going to look at are these defining or relative clauses. They're called defining and non-defining. I will define what those terms mean. We're going to look at compound nouns and word stress. We've got a lot to cover today. I'm going to make this screen a bit bigger so we can see everyone. All right, let's get started. Now, the reading we don't cover. It's not mandatory, but I will just, look at a few phrases along the way that you would do well to know and understand. His death came as a shock. This is a set phrase. So if you're not expecting something and it's either very good or very bad news, you can say it came as a shock. Mainly it's bad, but if someone wins a big award, you can say, wow, it came as such a shock to hear that. But in general, it's used in a negative way. Shocked and devastated, you can see here below. Devastated means you can't think straight. You can't think clearly. You're just so sad by the news, often the death of someone. Best loved novels, best loved of anything. It's the best loved something. I don't know, the best loved, maybe you had a favorite teacher in school, the best loved teacher. The best loved sports, the best loved, it's a compound adjective, and we'll find out what those are later, but that is an adjective. Now, if we go over here, child prodigy is someone who is a child who is extremely talented, beyond their years, often with the piano or the violin, maybe with mathematics. We have a few child prodigies that can compute maths at a very high level. Futuristic, you probably know what it is, but maybe you've never used the word future. The future is the noun. Futuristic is the adjective. And when we have these greatest, so these, not the comparatives, but the superlatives, greatest, best, we often use the before it. The greatest footballer, the greatest, the best student. We often use the article the before the superlative. All right, that's just a bit extra. We're not going to focus, as I mentioned, on the reading because there's a lot to do otherwise. I do want you to focus on the relative clauses. These are this clause that comes after a comma. Do you see the comma here? Comma here, this starts the sentence actually. Well, this doesn't take a comma, but it's still a relative clause, and I'll tell you why. So complete the relative clauses with who, which, whose, or where. I'll help you. Let's start. She wrote To Kill a Mockingbird. That's the novel. Now, this is a book, so it's not who. It's not possessed. We're not possessing anything here, I don't think. Where, it's not location, it's a thing. A book is a thing, so we say which. She wrote a book which is considered a classic of modern literature. At the age of 60, he moved to California. California is a location, so we can use where he lived as a Buddhist monk for 5 years. This is a relative clause starting with that comma. One of his muses was Marianne Jensen, the Norwegian woman whom he lived with. So we have here who, but this is actually not this is a defining clause, so there's no comma. And what we're going to find out is if you have commas before and after the clause, it's not as critical to the sentence. If you don't have a comma, it means you have to keep that information in the sentence. But for example, number one, she wrote To Kill a Mockingbird. That's a complete sentence. You don't need the rest. It's nice, but you don't need it to complete the sentence. The same here. At the age of 60, he moved to California. End of the sentence. But if you want to add something, you can add a relative clause, non-defining, it's not essential, where he lived as a monk. It's interesting though, isn't it? And then finally, look at this one. This is a defining clause. He didn't, Marion Jensen is not, she's not just a Norwegian woman. She's the woman he lived with. So the woman who he or whom he lived with. It was the role of Princess Leia in the first Star Wars film, which he made. There's no comma here because we need to know this information. It wasn't just the first Star Wars film, it was the first Star Wars film he made. All right, and we've got some others here. You can go through them, but we're going to focus now on the grammar bank. I'm going to read these, and I want you to read them back, and we'll talk about them. This is a defining relative clause. It's essential information. We have to have it in the sentence for it to make sense. Harper Lee is the woman who wrote To Kill a Mockingbird. So we don't have a comma here because you can't just say Harper Lee is the woman. No, she's the woman who wrote this book. So it's essential we have that extra information. She's not just the woman, she's the woman who wrote To Kill a Mockingbird. I'm looking for a book which teaches you how to relax. You're not looking for any book. You're looking for a book that teaches you how to relax. You need that information so we don't have a comma after book. It's essential. That's the house, not any house. It's the house where I was born. That's important. That last part's important. It's not any house. It's the house I grew up in. So no comma, it's a defining relative clause. For number 2, we use whose to mean of who or of which. Frank is the man whose brother, of whose brother plays for Manchester United. It's a tree whose leaves, the tree's leaves, Frank's brother. Whose brother? Frank's brother. Whose leaves? The tree's leaves. So it's possessive. It's a possessive pronoun. I've just had a text from a girl, who or that, and a person can take who or that. Who is more formal. It's obviously correct. That is more common in spoken English. Now, what's interesting is, you can even delete these because it's the same, it's different. I've just had a text from the girl I met. The girl I met, so we don't actually need who or that. So in spoken English, oftentimes we just delete it altogether, omit it. So in informal spoken English, we often don't even say this. But we can only do it when girl and I, when we have different subjects. The girl I met. If the girl and we're talking about the girl met later, then we can't do that. So we can't say, I've just had a text from the girl, which she was, or something. If the girl and she, if the girl is the same a subject for both of these, then we can't drop the who or that. I'll give a better sentence in a moment because we're going to have that right here. Actually, we're going to have it right. Yeah, it says here, we can't omit these if it's the same. If it's the same subject in both clauses, we have to have who and that. If it's different, we don't need it. Now, non-defining relative clauses mean it's extra information. You don't need to keep it. So watch, this painting is worth £1,000. That's the core sentence. Now, this painting, the extra information is here. This painting, which was painted in 1860. So that's extra information. So we separate it with commas. All right. Last week, I visited my aunt, Jane. That's nice. Now we added extra information. Who's nearly 90 years old. Wow, that's old. Or is it old? Do you have any family members older than 90, over 90? Any over 100? I don't. 89 is as old as we have, I think, in the family. Burford, where my grandmother was born. So that's a clause that talks about where. So it's an adverbial clause. Burford is a beautiful little town. Burford, where my grandmother was born, or grandfather was born, excuse me, is a beautiful town. My neighbor, whose son goes to my son's school, extra information, they go to school together, has just remarried. So we have extra information, so we put commas around them to signify that. So what you're going to find out here, though, is you're going to have examples where you have both who, that, and nothing. So you're going to have all three options where you can say who, that, or you don't need it if the subjects are different. All right, now let's continue here. You have, I think, some listening. Here's some speaking. So you're going to go and ask your speaking partner about these. We're going to skip the writing. We're not doing writing in this course, but we are doing listening. And I encourage you to take these seriously because it's really helpful. Make sure you're doing the listening. Make sure you understand it. And guess what? If you don't, come down here and find out all the words you didn't understand and then replay it. Here's a great chance to learn all the words that you don't understand because they're all written out. There's a transcription right there. Now, once you finish the listening, you've got more speaking, which should be interesting, and then vocabulary. I think the vocabulary is a little bit difficult. Now, you, of course, are aided or assisted by the files, but you have to match, for example, paperback. It's not easy. I'm not sure many people knew what that is or knew that answer. You have to match them. You're going to learn what they are afterwards because you're going to then try to, well, you'll know what they are because we're going to talk about them during the live if they don't talk about them and if you're not familiar with them. So ask questions during our last live about any of these words you're not familiar with. I'll be happy to give you examples, and we're going to talk about relative clauses a lot in our last meeting. All right, you have a lot to do. Compound nouns, race. I think this is not easy, but again, we have answers at the bottom or in the back. So I'm going to wish you well and study hard, learn lots, and I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.